3. I see a lot of familiar faces from last week, so I'm very happy to see them. I'm pretty sure there will be others joining us as we go through this webinar today. Thank you very much, Hans, yet again for coming along and investing your time and on this webinar as well. I'm going to be handing over to Hans right now so he can do his entire recap quickly and shoot into the next one. Hans, over to you. And guys, I'll be in the background. One last thing is please use the chat function for any comments and questions. And if there is any available time at the end, I'll open up the lines. See ya.
Thank you, Wes. And good morning and warm Pacific greetings, everyone. Welcome again to our second part of this webinar that's been hosted by Shop Care, Wes and his team, and grateful that you've been able to make some time. So just so you're aware that this webinar is only for an hour. And straight after the hour, I need to jump onto another link facilitating Port Samoa online to a Meatworks company down in Chicago. So they've pretty much just from yesterday. So they were hoping that I'll be available today. So excuse me if we do have to finish early, but yeah. So looking forward to our little talanoa this morning, and this part 2 is titled Introduction to the YAVU. So in normal Pacific cultures, we normally have a karakia, just like in Māori also, a lotu. But for today, because we had our lotu last week, and it was a Niuean version, I'll just start today with like a saying from our outgoing or previous Ministry of Pacific People's Minister, Albito Seal, the Honourable Albito Seal. And the quote that he left was "Whai mai, o le tele sulu, o le tele fo'i lea o whingota e maua." And in translation, it said that when there are many torches to light up the seashore in the dark of the night, our seafood harvest will be plentiful. And so hopefully that statement or that quote, as we light up our torches along the seashore, to say in the dark of the night that our seafood harvest will be plentiful. And so this torch that we're lighting today, hopefully it will enlighten us, and we can harvest, or we can gather into our basket some knowledge around good engagement with our workforce. And if they are Pasifika, great. So just as a quick review, last week we spoke about the theme around who are Pacific peoples, and yes, they're made up of different Pacific islands. So you've got Rotuman, you have the Samoans, you have the Tongans, you have the Cook Islanders, you have the Niueans, Fijians, the Tokelauans, the Tuvaluans, Kiribati, and so forth. So just to name a few there. But so I suppose looking within your workforce or the community or the audience that you work with, that you can identify some of these groups of people. And you may also look at other ethnicity that you work with. Could be the Filipinos, or could be the Chinese, could be the Indians, or other ethnicity, and look at how what can you do to as you identify them, knowing their culture, what values, what contribution can they bring to your business that you work with. And so, so what are the values? And we spoke about some of the important values that our Pacific people bring to your organization. And some of those values are families. They prioritize family as, on top of their list. That's why they come to work, to provide the necessities of life. So their families come first in their lives, and also their spirituality. So I'm sure if you know your people on Sundays, if they don't turn up for work, if there is work, you know that they're at church. Or if you don't have work on Sundays, that'll be their place where there'll be place of worship, filling their cup with spirituality. And then there's aroha, there's respect, there's and all other areas of those values that they bring to your organizations. And so it's getting to know your Pasifika peoples. So as I mentioned last week, if you do have the opportunity or have already have traveled to the Pacific Islands for, say, a relaxing holiday, if you get the opportunity, say for example in Samoa, that's where I'm originally from, make it a point to go and jump on one of those buses that not like our the waka grey buses that we have in Aotearoa or whatever colour they may be, but they have these unique buses over in the islands, and especially in Samoa, that if you ever get an opportunity, jump on those buses, take a tour around the village or around the island, and they'll be blasting their island or reggae music, and really, you think it's already Christmas already, but they'll decorate their buses, and people just hop on and they just like to enjoy the ride. And so you'll get that exposure, or even go to a local church nearby the hotel that you're staying in, just to sort of get a taste of the values or the culture of the Pasifika. So if you get an opportunity, I would encourage you to jump on board. So today is basically, we're talking about the YAVU. So we're going to start introduce, what is a YAVU? As you can see in the picture, the two pictures there. So, there's the first one on my left. So I hope it's on your left too. So those are seasonal workers. So last week on Thursday, I was down in the Hawke's Bay area. I was contacted to see if my availability to go and deliver our Puatanofo Come Home Safely program to a group of Samoan workers this is their first season here in New Zealand. And they're working in the Hawke's Bay area, in one of the biggest growers in terms of harvesting their fruits. And so these workers, they were selected. They come here to New Zealand and don't know anything about health and safety, and they've gone through a bit of an induction, learning how to perhaps open a bank account. When do they have to go and see the doctors, etc. All those important information. So they're settled well in New Zealand, so they can carry out their seasonal work, which is harvesting and maybe pruning and planting during their time in here in New Zealand. So as you can see in that photo, these workers, they've been shown or demonstrated how to prune or maybe pick, and then how to use certain equipment that will as part of their work tasks. So, and I don't know if you can see there, one of them looks very like he's the supervisor, but then there's always one there that would help translate to assist those workers understand, because these workers, English is second language, or maybe none at all, but they're good workers. They would work through the hot weather, maybe some difficult tasks, but they would do the task. They would be faithfully going in there. But it's making sure that in this YAVU that you're able to communicate that message, and having those good, strong engagement for your workers. And then on the second picture there, you'll see if you were to attend a special occasion, whether in the islands or here in New Zealand, and it's a Pacific ceremony, they would have what they call an awa or a kava ceremony, where you see the big bowl there, and you'll have in Samoa, they'll have a female tupo, a lady dressed up, and she'll rub this sort of wiping the edges of the bowl, and inside that bowl will be the liquid or the drink, or the awa they call it, or the kava, and that's a ceremonial drink, and that's bringing the community, bringing the people that are involved in that particular event together, and basically having a talanoa. But first, you have the awa ceremony to show that the community or the village is acknowledging your presence. And like the American Indians, they smoke the peace pipe. Well, this is not smoking the kava, it's drinking the kava, and you're able to break those barriers and then start your social or your engagement with the community. So that's just a quick introduction in terms of what those two pictures show. So it's now we're talking about what is the YAVU. So if we can get to the next slide, please, Wes. So what is YAVU? So I'll just read this real quickly. This is a statement given by Professor Stephen Ratuva from the University of Canterbury and the director of Macmillan Brown Research Centre for Pacific Studies. He says, quote, YAVU is an arena of convergence where social identity, environmental cosmos, and the ancestral world meet and engage. It is where the world of mythology and social cultural reality intersect and define each other. Now, when I read that, oh man, this is so up there. But basically, the YAVU is, in layman's term, it's basically sitting down and knowing how to engage with your workforce or people in the community, and especially if it's Pasifika. So we'll go to the next slide, please, Wes. And this is what the YAVU, what we're going to be looking at today. And so why do we need the YAVU? We'll start with that question. Why do we need YAVU? And this is within the Pacific context. Effective engagement with Pacific peoples, creating strong and sustainable relationships. And that is so true. And like I shared earlier, when I went down to the Hawke's Bay last week, this particular grower, a big grower, they were reliant on the local workforce, unemployed people through the Ministry of Social Development. But after the floods, as we know, that occurred around the country earlier last year, I think it's last year. So a lot of those workers didn't come back. And then as they rebuilt and they're ready for harvesting, they realized that their workforce was no longer there. So they had produce to harvest. So they had conversations with immigration. What do they need to do to bring these seasonal workers in? And so basically, as they were describing to me, this is their first group of Samoan RSC workers coming to New Zealand to assist with their harvesting and the work. So what they described was a couple of them from the business, they spoke to some local Samoan community leaders, and they were told, you've got to hop on the plane and go over, meet with government officials in Samoa, and then look at going into the villages that they would recommend to start engaging with the Pasifika. And so they did that. Rather than just sort of say, this is how many workers we need, can you send them through? They went over there and they sat down in the whale and would have had a kava, a drink, just to sort of break the ice, get to know them. And as you see, we read that effective engagement with Pacific peoples, creating strong and sustainable relationships. So when I was down there last week, did our whakawhanangatanga, did a bit of a quick round the room introduction. When they introduced themselves and they was telling me their name and what village they came from, the village when I go back to Samoa is called Manasi. It's in Sabai. The villages where they come from, they were all the surrounding villages. So I knew these men in terms of, I know the village. And when it came to myself and I introduced myself and where my father's from and the village where my mum's from, their eyes lit up. They said, oh, we've got a family, a whānau member here talking to us about health and safety. And so, but the pathway was already established with the business. And so they already created a strong and sustainable relationship. And so when they called me in and, I just added more to that relationship. And so discussing health and safety, our putanofo, it went really well. And, so they started to understand why we have these systems in place. The second point there is it involves a significant investment from the outset. It should not be treated as a one-off transaction. And that's so true. So it's an ongoing process. We, not a tick box. Yep, we've done this, we've done that. It's continuous. So within WorkSafe, and this, hopefully, as I share my experiences and my talanoa this morning, that this is my experiences that I've had engaging with workers and even the businesses from a Pacific lens. And so within WorkSafe, they've actually been contacting our Pacific network and saying, hey, we've got a situation here or an event or an accident, victims involved, families involved. And so as I don't know, those who were here last week, I shared that we had a fatality. Our very first Pacific worker died in the forestry a few weeks ago. He was a Tongan gentleman, and so the inspectors that were doing the investigations and finding all the details, they said, this is a Pacifica person. We need to contact our Pacific network. So they rang me and said, what do we do, Hans? What do we do? And so I basically said, we need to acknowledge this. We need to find out the family. We need to, be there when the police or, and then let them know that this is our processes, but at the same time, acknowledge, the kaupapa. That's in Māori terminology, but what is the Pacific processes? If you really want to engage and, to go in there and get a statement from the family, find out a bit more details about the worker and so forth. And so those are the things that, and it's ongoing. And then after I gave that information to that particular inspector, they came back to me and said, Hans, we're going into taking a statement. Is there any, do we have to go in there, what is the process? So I basically said, make sure that, maybe simple things like remove your shoes when you go into the house, into their whare. That just shows respect. I know the police, they'll just walk in there with their boots and, take a statement and whatnot. But I said, from a WorkSafe perspective, we're going in there to ask some information, again, just show a bit of respect. And that's what I do as a Pacific Islander. When I go to a person's house, I always remove my shoes, and that just shows respect. And then you sit down and, you talk to your whakapapa, you say, I'm so-and-so, I'm Samoan, I'm here, you share with them where you're from. And eventually, and even, let me just share, I went again to do a statement and being an interpreter for one of our inspectors. And we had a brief outside on the road, and this is what we need to do, blah, blah, blah. And so we went in, and the door was open. The inspector introduced herself, and straight into the house, walked in, and then I took my shoes off, and then I walked in, and I greeted myself in the Samoan language because I knew that they were Samoan, and then I was looking around, and for a chair or something that and they offered, cleared one of the couches, and I went to sit down, and the inspector stood there, sort of, and so it was she was up there, and the victim, or the person we went to interview, was sitting down. So it was like them talking down at the individual, rather than finding the space and come down to the same eye level. And that's why I was looking for a chair. But I didn't want to interrupt. It was her interview, but later on we had a bit of a chat about some of the cultural practices that we have. But it's those sort of things that that comes to mind in terms of if you're engaging with any Pasifika or any cultural, making sure that we're all on the same level, setting the scene, setting the right atmosphere in terms of, if you're going in there to get some data or just to find out why they're absent from work, it's going in there, showing respect, all the values that we spoke about. Then you can build that relationship, and then you start getting some, information. The third point there is ensuring Pacific people's voices are heard and incorporated in each step of the engagement phase. Again, if you're a business and you're wanting, some data or some information from the community or within your own workforce, again, it's giving the opportunity for your workforce, if they are Pacific or whatever nationality they are, allow their voice to be heard. And it could be a suggestion box, but for me, when I've heard that from various workplaces, they say, "Oh, we have a suggestion box, and we encourage the workers to go and write something and put it into that box, and then we go in there and open up, and then we read through it." And I said, that sometimes works, but if you want, some information or good engagement, to hear the voices of your people, face to face. Eye contact, that's your best. And so it could be in toolbox meetings, you're sitting down with them, or even if you have regular Friday after work sausage sizzle, just to sort of get to know your workers, after a long week. Take that opportunity, when your workers are just, they're out of their overalls, they're not in their workspace, they're just, relaxing, enjoying a few drinks, or having some food. That's the time. Engage with them, and that's where you can start to hear their voices. If there are things that you want to engage them on. And then the last point there is genuine engagement is realized and policy development is optimized when the values, needs, and aspirations of Pacific communities are considered throughout the process. And that's true also, ladies and gentlemen, that genuine engagement is realized. And so if you really want, good engagement, good data, good information, or even good suggestions, what do you would like to see our end of Christmas or end of the year function to look like? They say, "Oh, whatever," then you go, "Oh, no, I really want to hear your suggestions." So, it's going, okay, how can I be genuine about this? What can I do? And so, and that's where I mentioned in the past, if you're going into your lunchroom and there are a group of them sitting over there having their lunch, and you always sit in that particular table, move yourself and go over there and sit down with them and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" And get into the chat with them, and then and start be genuine and asking, "How's your family?" Once they start to see that, then they know you're genuine. They know you have that aroha, that love for them as a business owner, or as a manager, or as a senior person. You're talking to your workers. You're engaging. So that's just why we need the YAVU. Next slide, please, Wes. Okay. So this is just a real quick snapshot in terms of who should use the YAVU. So again, YAVU can be used by anyone who works in local and central government or the private sector, who is required to engage with Pacific communities. And so they could be service delivery providers, frontline staff across government. So for myself as a WorkSafe inspector, and non-government organizations, you've got policy advisors, public and private sectors, community groups, and so forth and so forth. So yeah, that's just a list. But from a frontline staff across government and non-government, and I'll just share my experience. Again, we go in as inspectors, go into workplaces. We are the regulators for the health and safety. But I've learned that in my experience that, if you really want a good engagement, not just with Pasifika, even non-Pasifika, for me, going in there and having a chat with a European or a builder that's been in the trade for many years, and I've had some pushbacks, and when you get some really vicious or physical pushbacks, I've learned to step back and sometimes walk away from those sort of situations. But I've also learned what can I do to ensure that I don't get any pushbacks, or I don't get any aggressive PCB or business owners. And so I've learned that just go in there, big smiles. They know who you are because you're driving around in a WorkSafe or an OSH vehicle. And so in the past, so I've been with the department for nearly 30 years as an inspector. We used to wear ties. We used to wear ties and going into workplaces, but then we were told, get those, don't wear ties, because if you're leaning over checking a moving machine, it could be tangled in there, and then you end up becoming a victim. So we got rid of our ties, but we were seen as very official. But for me was making sure that they know who we are, but we came as inspectors to help them, support them. And that's the same thing with as a business. My experiences with my engagement with businesses, some would maybe on the intercom, good morning everybody, welcome to work together, this is your manager, blah blah blah, hope you have a good day. And that's the intercom, and you're going, it was a bit muffled, or they didn't hear it clearly, but that was their engagement over an intercom. And some would be just walking past, and they just go wave the hand, or just do the raise the eyebrow, and then just keep going to the office. Some were really good. Some business owners were really good. They had an open door policy. They welcome anybody to come in, and if anybody came in with a issue, concern, yes, they would sometimes they'll say, "Oh, go and see your first aider," or go and see your HR person. But some of these managers will say, "Hey, come in, have a seat. I've got a few minutes I can spare. I'll have a chat. How's things going?" That really shows to the worker that you care, that you really wanting to engage with them. And then the worker, the business owner, will start to know your workers a little bit more. They've got young children, or they've got adult children. They're traveling overseas, their mother or a member of their family has passed away, so they can start to know, and even what are their concerns. And even if you're having a bit of a problem, they say, "Hey, what would you do if you were in this situation? You're doing a whole new layout in your site." They'll probably come up with some brilliant ideas, but it's a matter of knowing how to tap into that. So that's just my experience within the workplace, as going out as an inspector, talking to business owners, talking to workers. But that's how you utilize the YAVU. It's creating that safe working environment, communication-wise, and engaging well. Our next slide, please, Wiz. So, when can YAVU be used? And this is an important part. So, when can YAVU be used? So, YAVU can be used whenever you're engaging with Pacific people. And there's 4 principles here, broad principles of YAVU can be applied to each step of the engagement process. It does not alter the general engagement steps, but it's designed to overlay it with a culturally responsive approach. So first principle is understanding the context. So know who Pacific peoples are. And as we discussed last week, so, know your, are they, if you're going in there and you're thinking they're Tongan and you start speaking Tongan to them, they'll go, oh, no, actually, I'm a Niuean. So knowing, and even when some of my colleagues within WorkSafe, they ring up and say, oh, Hans, I think they're Tongans. And I go, oh, how do you know? Oh, they had a gold teeth. And I said, oh, okay. Did you speak to them? Did you ask their names? Oh, yeah, their names so. And I said, that sounds more of a Samoan. But then I got them go back and ask, and then they actually came back, yeah, you're actually right, Hans, they're Samoans. Okay, so sometimes it's, you got to know your Pacific people, know your workforce, know your community if you are connecting with the community and people outside. Principle number 2 is understanding the environment. Make time to connect. And like I said, if you're in the lunchroom scenario, make the time. Yeah, you're only doing a 15-minute lunch break or half an hour, whatever it is. Go and sit with your workers. Maybe it's one person sitting on their own. Just go. They might be wanting to sit on their own. I don't know, but just go and connect up. Hey, how you doing? If you don't know them, introduce yourself. So, but make the time to connect. If you're an organization that engaging with the community outside of the workplace, it's again, ringing around, maybe local offices, if you wanted to go to one of their meetings, it could be a community meeting or whatever it may be. Make the time, find out what time they're meeting, and then make the time to go. If they're meeting 8 o'clock at night, you go, oh, that's my CrossFit class that time, or that's my whatever it may be. Make some time, commit to saying, I'll go this date, this is the time they're meeting, I will be there, and they've already put me on the agenda so I can share a few of what we wanted to get from them. But make the time to connect with your Pacific workers or Pacific community. Principle number 3, understanding responsibility. So recognize Pacific people's contribution. And as I said, a lot of times, and I was just talking to a company down in Dunedin this morning, and the health and safety manager was saying, oh, we want you to come down, Hans, and do your Portanofo program. And I said, oh, why is that? Tell me what the reasons. And they said, when we have our meetings with them, they nod their head. They nod their head. And I say, oh, so what does that indicate? And they say, oh, that just tells us that they understand what we're saying. And so we sort of say, oh, okay, we'll tick the box and so the workers understand. But then when we go back, they're doing everything the opposite of what we just told them in the toolbox meeting. And then I said, well, you've got to realize that English is second language to those workers that you've just brought in. And then they said, yeah, that's right. So how do you do that? And I said, well, sometimes you have to articulate your questions or show and tell, demonstrate, because they don't, if you're using high level words or conversation, then for them it's like they switch off. They don't, because they don't understand. And so it's got to be palatable. You've got to make sure that, and then after that she said, they actually came up to this person and said, boss, we can do it this way. Because once they understood what she was saying, they came to her and said, oh, actually, we'd rather have it done this way. So they would, But because they didn't understand the high-level conversation, they weren't able to contribute to the discussion. They just sort of stood there nodding their head, yes, boss, yes, boss. But once they understood what the company was saying, some of the changes they were wanting to make, they actually said, well, actually, boss, we can do it better this way. Because, you know, the management, when speaking with them in many different industries, I have, you know, in my conversation, you've got to realize your workers, they work in and on and around those machines or that work area, 8 hours, sometimes 10 hours or 12 hours, long hours. They know the ins and outs of that operation. And so if you're going to change or improve or modify your operation procedures, make sure those workers are part of the conversation. Don't just rely on what's on in front of your screen and what's on the manual and alter it. Have a conversation with the operator, the person that's doing the work. Get their feedback. They can make some recommendation or suggestions, but their contribution is vital in terms of any improvements you may have as a business. And then the last principle there, principle 4, is Te Lava. Te Lava. Sorry, Te Leva. The va is basically the gap, the space. So teo is to prepare, or what's another word to say? Yeah, prepare well to bridge that gap. Bridge that gap. So, and that's build, nurture, strengthen your relationships with your workforce, especially if they are Pasifika. And the picture there with the tupo, the lady that, as I described earlier, that in that kava bowl, she would be the one to, and then she would get the cup and scoop it in, and then distribute it out to the other male folks that are doing the running around. So this person tupo basically is preparing the tapa cloth or the fine mats, and that's some of the cultural processes that comes as part of that building, nurture, and strengthening the relationships. So yeah, so that's when can YAVU be used, and so those are the 1, 2, 3, 4 principles to consider when you're using the YAVU. So and so I'm sorry, Wes, I'm not sure if this is the next slide as part of the today. Yep, this is our final slide for the day, and then any Q&A after that. So how does YAVU work? So engagement process. So 1, planning and preparation. So as I mentioned, if you're planning to go out to a community, if that's your audience, you know, make sure you've already organized that you're going to be there, you plan your day, your evening, and make time to attend. And then number 2, so this is your engagement process. So identifying relevant stakeholders, anyone that would you would invite to come along with you if you're going to engage. It could be an interpreter or somebody, maybe if it's a pastoral care, if you're in seasonal work, or if it's a situation at work where one of the workers who is Pasifika is, you wanted to have a chat about their performance, again, making sure that they have the right people to support them. Number 3, engage and seek participation from stakeholders. Again, those who you bring in with you when you start your engagement process, and gather information and review. All right, so it depends on what you're using your information for, if it's for data, if it's whatever the case may be. So again, I'm not sure who online and what business you represent, but again, that's your engagement process. The YAVU principles that's where you apply it. So when you're planning in preparation, understanding the context, why you're going out there, why you're going to meet with your Pacific workforce or engaging with them. And then number 2, it goes aligned understanding the environment, identifying relevant stakeholders. If you're going into a Pacific community or you're going into a home to do an interview, like as I shared, making sure that you're taking in the relevant stakeholders, but also understanding the environment for your safety, or it could be making sure that you understand the culture. So going back to that experience of that fatality in Hawke's Bay, and the second time that the inspector rang me and said, Hans, we're going in there to interview the spouse. And so he was just checking with me, what do I say at the end when I leave? And I said, yeah, this is how you say, thank you very much for your time. Condolences to the family, and express the love, the aroha, but in the Tongan language, because the worker was keen to learn the Tongan language. So again, understanding the environment, where you're going, making sure that you're prepared. And number 3 there, as we talk about engaging, the YAVU principles, understanding the responsibility. Engage is C. So who's responsible? So in some cases, it could be, if it's one of the office ladies coming with you, going into a home or visiting a family, one of your workers who's sick, you can ask that person, hey, can you go and organize some kai, get some food or some flowers to take over to the family, or if it's one of the workers, close family members passed away, you're going to go and engage with the family. You organize all those sort of things and gather information and review, and that's Te Lewa and bridging that gap, because you've been there, you've either gathered the information, or you've basically you've established that strong engagement foundation with the audience, with those who you're participating in. So that's in terms of our theme for today. What is the YAVU, and when do you look to utilizing it? So the next question will be the Q&A, or the next slide will be the Q&A. Sorry, Wes, I haven't been on chat to see if there's any during the presentation, but is there anyone online that wish to ask any question or share a thought or your experience in terms of your engagement with your workforce?
Yeah, hi everybody. So the lines are open now. If you would like to ask a live question, please feel free to do so. Just unmute yourself and ask Hans away. Hans, just while someone is thinking of a question, it was really good this session. Even though this is the second time I've seen it, I've learned a lot again, because sometimes the information is just too much at that point. But going through it for the second time, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this, and I can use this. So good on you for going through this again. That's a good job.
Thanks, Wes.
Any questions, guys? Anyone? It seems like you did a really good job, Hans. People don't have questions. Excellent.
Maybe if I gave some homework, that might be raise some questions. Oh, no homework. But that's okay. If there's no Q&A, because I know I've just got sent a reminder of that presentation delivery down to our Invercargill business. Yep. But just again, really just express my appreciation to those who jumped online and came on board and listened to the webinar. So I hope that anything that I've shared from my experience as a workplace inspector, my experience with engaging with businesses and especially our workers, and that it's added to your kite, your basket of knowledge, and hopefully it's to make some little improvements in terms of your engaging with your workers. These are just suggestions, so that way you can really have some positive, outcomes in terms of getting to know your workers, your Pacific workforce, if they are Pacifica. But if there are other ethnicity, again, it's finding, doing a bit of research, finding out how do Indonesians or the Filipinos or whatever culture they're from, find out, how would best engage with them, what are their favorite foods? One day you might bring something and share with them in the lunchroom and have a really good, wholesome conversation with your workforce. So thank you.
Awesome. No, thank you very much for that. Guys, just before you go, and just a reminder for next week will be the last webinar on this series. Please don't miss it. And if I'm speaking under correction, but potentially Apollo will also be joining us, and he'll be going through a couple of minutes just to talk on mental health well-being from a Pasifika point of view. So guys, thank you very much for coming along for today. Really appreciate you. Thank you, Hans, yet again. Brilliant job, mate. And we'll let you go. And good luck with this afternoon with Invercargill. And I'll see you all next week. See ya.
Thank you, Wes. Have a good day, everyone.